Welcome to this edition of the Jitsi Community Go. First, we'll go around the team, giving an update. I can start myself. So, last week, there were a few things. First, an update from Sue. He was not able to join, but the update is that Jitsi Meet was released to FDruid. It was a long wanted thing. And the second thing for me is that last week we also updated the stable release with Chikasi, Jibri, and Jitsi Meet. That's it. Anybody else from the team with an update?
Maybe we can say that there's an ongoing effort. I don't know if this has been said before, but we're working on load testing the bridge, the UI, with many participants. So the goal is to reach in some form 100 participants eventually with the bridge and the Jitsi Meet UI. We have identified. Christo has been helping me with all this. Primarily, I don't know if Christo is in the call. Maybe he can say a bit more about it. So he has found out that many issues stem from the fact that the Jitsi Meet UI, not libJitsi Meet, not any other component, but the UI is quite expensive, and it requires a lot of effort to make it work. So we're going to be focusing on that to try to optimize that a little bit. And he has come up with a nice way to reduce the costs of running Malios, which is our load testing tool. So, yeah, maybe this is something. Yeah, that's for me.
Thanks. Anybody else?
On mobile, I think it's important to know that we dropped iOS 10 support since last week.
Two relatively quick ones from me. First, we have an ongoing effort to support or to integrate RTC stats. So we're just in the beginning stages, and I don't know of any timeline, but we're working on that. We probably have to eventually, for the version we release, we'll have to modify the code a bit, but for the moment we're testing with vanilla RTC stats. And I forgot my second point. I'll share later if I remember.
I can give an update on kind of new bridge stuff. We kind of increased our kind of canary rollout on Meet Jitsi with new bridge. So we had like half of all Meet Jitsi traffic running through there. And that was looking good for the most part. We did discover one issue that occurs when like a client sends a malformed jingle, and that caused an issue. So we're working on a fix for that. And once that is fixed, then we'll kind of resume with another big canary rollout, and we'll keep progressing from there. So the plan would be to get all of Meet Jitsi running on it, and at that point, I think we'll pretty much consider things stable. So I'll send an update once we get there.
Okay, my second point was me and Brian were looking at the XMPP component code in the bridge the other day, and we see that we can avoid a lot of extra complexity if we remove that mode. In our deployments, we use the MOOC mode everywhere, which is based on SMAC. It connects as an XMPP user instead of an XMPP external component. We know that some people used to have valid reasons for using the component, and we'd like to hear from anyone if you're still using the component and you're not able to switch, we'd like to know about it. there's no immediate plans to remove it, but if we can deprecate it at some point, we would like to do that because we can then remove 2 of our libraries and clean up our code a bunch. So let us know.
Thanks. Any other updates?
I just want to see what you think.
We also started a work on better Firefox implementation. I think that will get some love in the following weeks and months. So if there are no updates, I'll give the open mic. So anybody from the community has questions, something to share?
I have a question regarding your API. So we're working on moving to a new implementation of using Jitsi and kind of a new version of our app where we're implementing our own UI using your API. And you have libjitsi meet API, and then you've also got the external API, external_API.js. Sorry, this is Chris. I'm from BBS. We originally used libjitsi meet API in order to kind of modify the UI that you guys are providing. And now I'm experimenting with and successfully have implemented a really minor version of our new UI using the external API. On your GitHub, you've mentioned that you intend to release an NPM version of libjitsi meet. I'm wondering if you're looking at releasing an NPM module of the external API. Because right now that can't really be used in a project as it stands, adding it as a tag to an index.html. I can try to import it inside of, say, a React or just Node project on the back end, but there's not a way to use the API directly inside of Visual Studio or VS Code.
We have been talking only for the library. We haven't mentioned anything about the external API, but that thing should be moving with the backend. So that's one of the reasons you need to be sourcing it from the backend.
What's the question, by the way? Sorry for the interruption, but I had some connectivity issues at our start. And
whether we will release the external API as NPM package.
My personal opinion, though, is that this is probably the same situation as libjitsi meet. So if we do that, basically the biggest problem that may occur is that if you are using a version that is not supported by the deployment, right? So currently we don't keep any compatibility about it because we only care about the use case where you're sourcing the script. So so basically this is the only problem that I see. Otherwise, it's super cool if we do it, but I honestly don't see too much value into it actually. Especially for your use case, what's the value that you see if we support like a NPM package?
So there's really, with using your API right now, there's 2 choices. There's either re-implement the entire UI using libjitsi meet, or there's not re-implement the entire UI and modify it to our needs, which is a lot more convenient. The the value proposition really, I think, is that we don't have to recreate the entire UI using libjitsi meet. We can leverage what you're providing with a default UI, set our options, modify it slightly, and put our own logo on it. But we don't have to re-implement the entire UI, and then we can wrap our authentication around that, which is really what we're looking to do, is the authentication piece and a little bit of white labeling.
But how this is related to releasing the external API as an npm package?
Well, from a coding, from a coding perspective, nothing about the API can be leveraged directly in, say, on the Node side. If I were doing a Node.js entirely backend implementation, to use that during the programming process. So I can't I can't do an import of your module and then use your module and see all of the API in my code. I have to.
But do you really have a use case for a Node.js? Because it's hard for me to imagine that you want to write a server-side application for the UI of Meet.
Right. So I mean, so a real-world example. Say I'm doing Create React App. I can't use your module in Create React App, and I can't use it at all until I've waited for your iframe to load. So right now I have to load your iframe through appending a script tag to an index file in order to get it to load at the same time as my React component. If I was able to bundle it with my React component, that would be much different.
I don't see the difference, honestly. Sorry if I'm missing something, but the essential part of the iframe API is that it uses iframe, and even if we release an npm package, I guess it's going to continue using an iframe.
The iframe is not the problem.
I guess you always have.
The iframe is not the problem. The problem is okay. So you're familiar with like Create React App? It's not actually what I'm using, but it's a good example.
Not really, but
okay. So I mean, if you're doing hot reloading and you're loading in a React component, when that React component loads, the timing of when your iframe loads versus when my React component loads is off. So in order for me to make sure that your iframe is available before I can interact with it with my component, because it's not loading and being bundled with my component, I have to basically append your script when I want it to load. In order to use it with my React component in the back end, if I was able to bundle it as an NPM module, they would load at the same time and React would handle all of that. So there's a huge difference from the development standpoint.
So, okay, I kind of see what, but in the same time, you need the iframe to be loaded as well, or you don't need the iframe to be loaded.
Well, it's the timing.
The script load.
It's
sure. The thing is that so there's two parts. The first part is that if you have a separate script tag, because they are loaded asynchronously, basically you can't guarantee what is going to be loaded and when, right? So that's first problem. This is just a problem for using the external API, no matter what it does. And the second problem is that we are using iframe. So if you need the iframe to be loaded, it's a totally different story, because basically even if you don't need to use script, you still have to wait for the iframe to load. Is that correct?
That's correct. But if it's being bundled with my React app, then I know everything loads at the same time. The bigger problem.
The iframe is not going to load in the same time anyway. I mean, your script is going to be faster for sure.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. I mean,
so
what I can make sure is when I do, for example, component did mount, I can make sure that I'm calling your API at the time that component did mount. Right now, if I do component did mount and I wait for it, what I have to do is I have to inject your script tag as just a string, like append a script element, and then call the function for the API to make sure that it's live for the component. And I also can't work with the API at all in that scenario.
Why?
So I can't, for example, in VS Code, load your external min.js and call methods from it because they don't exist until they're loaded on the front end.
So I'm not sure about the VS Code and IDE, but so if you ask me, like, I mean, we have very good MD there that is pretty much up to date, and we're trying to keep it up to date. So I guess the functionality provided by VS Code to check out the API is going to be better. But so at least for me, the VS Code argument.
It's not so much VS
opinion
Code as a node module in general. If it's not available as a node module, it can't be bundled in something where we're doing basically a Webpack or a parcel bundle and then sending it to the front.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So I kind of agree with you, although my personal opinion, and this is not like official for the team, and I'm not saying we are not going to do it ever, but just my personal opinion on the matter is that I'm more afraid actually of somebody using the wrong version, basically. I mean, not compatible versions between the deployment and the package there,
Yeah.
or having for us to maintain basically, because I mean, if we do that and we want to guarantee that every version is going to work, we have to basically maintain.
So I have a suggestion for that, actually, because I read similar responses on your.
Oops, did we lose Chris?
I think you cut out.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So I had a suggestion. I mean, just that if you're, I read that in issues on GitHub in some of your responses that the concern is the version, and I get that. I mean, that makes sense. On the other hand, if I'm sourcing it from the same place that you are, and you have an npm module available, and you're sourcing it from the npm module, I mean, ultimately, I'm just loading the external script into mine. Right? It doesn't matter where I source it from. If you had it available, I can source the same version every single time. I can also, find better solutions with like npx, so that I'm loading it dynamically and making sure that I have the same version. I see your argument in that it could ultimately break my app, but that's for me to maintain. Right now, I just don't even have that option.
So yeah, sure, and I'm sure you're gonna take a great care in order to maintain the versions, but unfortunately, I mean, if you look into even in the thread there in GitHub, you can see many examples where like many other people are not so good in maintaining the versions. And actually, it's not only for you, because we are actually as well using the iframe API in some cases. So yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to be the final decision. I don't know. I'm not aware that we plan actually to do something. I realize what's your problem. If you're asking me for my personal opinion is that I'm more worried of actually releasing an npm package with that than having the current situation. Because to be honest, basically, I see it's a little bit pain, but we're talking here about the two, three lines of code, basically loading the script and waiting it, right, and using it after that. Yeah, also there's a small inconvenience in the IDE, but I mean, just for me, it doesn't worth the pain of explaining, let's say, 100 times, okay, maybe your versions are incompatible or something like that, or the pain of basically being careful on every change and commit that we are not breaking anything between the host page and the Jitsi meet, let's say. But yeah, I mean, if the team decides that we're going to release the package and everybody are in favor of that, we can do it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even if there was at least a simpler way of working with the API from that perspective, because it's, I mean, you guys have documentation on GitHub, but being able to pull the code in makes a huge difference in how we can develop with it.
But you actually have the code. You can pull the code, and the code is in the Jitsi Meet project.
Well, that file is dependent upon multiple subdirectories above that. So we have to pull in the entire Jitsi Meet repo, really. I mean, we can cut parts of it out. We have to pull in a very large chunk in order to use that. There's a number of dependencies in that file that are from, I think, directories like 3 or 4 levels above that. So I mean, if it were as easy as just pulling in the code, the file itself, and working directly off methods, or like that file had no dependencies, that would be, I mean, that would be a huge improvement. But it's
like
not.
By pulling, you mean like just pulling and using it with some changes of yours, or what do you mean?
Right. I mean, if I want to call like what's the, let me pull it up here real quick. If I want to call Jitsi Meet external API, right? That if I want to instantiate that new object, or that, like, that constructor, when I do that, I have to do it kind of blindly. Like, I can't. I either have to pull in the entire Jitsi Meet repo and then I run into conflicts because of dependencies, or I have to call it blindly and append that script to the page in order to use it. So I can do that following your documentation on your API and make it work just fine. But in the midst of actually programming with it, I can't say actually call the function Jitsi Meet, new Jitsi Meet external API, and then say dot and say see the other methods or anything like that.
Yeah, but you're here basically talking about the ID issue, right?
I mean, that's the ID issue, but it also means that none of those things get bundled. So if I wanted to take your
Oh yeah,
right?
sure. Yeah. So I understood all that, and again, I'm saying if you are asking me personally, my personal opinion is that I wouldn't make the change to create an npm package, and then I basically explain why. And again, I mean, if everybody else are in favor of that and feel strongly about it, like from the team and maybe a new, but we can probably do it. But again, if you ask me personally, for me personally, this is not a strong enough reason to go ahead and go into that direction, basically.
I think the goal of asking the question on the community is to see the opinion of the team, and I don't know if we have the people that we need. I think so. Who is missing? So I don't know if the people who are knowledgeable in this area, other than Christo, are here. So, and I might be reading the room wrong, but it seems to me like we're not able to answer the question right now. Perhaps we should take it to the community forums. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the problem?
Actually, also Mio usually have very strong opinions about sourcing versus creating a package. So I guess he's going to be interested in discussion like this.
So yeah, let's take it back to the community, and we can also discuss it internally between the team with the rest of the people interested in it. Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? There is a question in the chat about guideline for Jitsi Meet code for beginner developer. we don't have such documentation like developer documentation, like whatever is there in the Jitsi Meet in the doc folder, that's it. The rest is just asking questions in the community forum.
Hi, this is Paul. I have a quick question.
Paul.
Hi. So, is Jitsi? I know that Jitsi has had a bunch of updates, and one of the sort of complexities we've had to deal with in the past with Jitsi is it was a little bit behind, so it didn't support RTCP mux, and also we had to run kind of manage multiple ports as well, which is a little bit of an infrastructural complexity. Is that completed? I noticed that it seems to now support bundle and RTCP mux. Is that the case? Can we comment on that? Like, can we run it on a single port now?
Yes, you can. That's supported.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Are there any other significant changes we need to be aware of on that front? The documentation, I think, still sort of suggests that it's you need to have a start and end port, but we can just disregard that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't remember, Bruce, if you remember any details about it, but yeah, we needed to implement that for the new bridge. So yeah, maybe some of those parameters are outdated and needs update, but yeah, it works. Our main use case, the way we use it is with in translator mode. So basically, no audio is being decoded or encoded on the machine. It acts like the video bridge, just sending all the streams to the SIP side, and the mixing happens on the SIP side.
Right. So that's sort of for the SIP use case, that's the recommended approach, RTB translator mode.
Not that it's recommended, but yeah, this is just what we use. We test and try not to break the other one, but just mentioning that this is the main use case. We use it right now. And transcribing, of course, which basically uses the decoding. So
right. So transcribe, then I guess you can't use RTB translator mode, right? If you're using it for Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Anybody else?
I have one more quick question if there's nobody else in line. Sorry. So we're kind of planning a kind of a new feature where we want to be able to leverage. We want to be able to log into XMPP ahead of time, and we're using the external API. Is there, or maybe another way of saying this, we want to just kind of stay connected, like stay logged into XMPP. You guys have any thoughts on that versus the external API sort of connecting just to join a room?
But what's the purpose of it? Because so basically, if you're using the external API, you're gonna create the iframe and the whole UI thing and everything, basically. Is that what you want, or something else?
Yeah, I guess we would just create the iframe, but leave the iframe. I guess or change the behavior such that we're still XMPP connected, but not necessarily in a room in an MUC for a conference. but then we can still join. We can kind of join or leave conferences. So I think the
So you
previously
don't you said you don't want to be in the MUC, or you said you want to be there?
well, effectively we would just have multiple MECs. We would probably just create a separate MEC that would be sort of a global MEC for an entire team. So because we want to be able to do separate presence updates and kind of support calling and other features, just sort of native XMPP versus
so you basically just need to join a chat room, but you don't need all the functionality behind like a video conferencing and stuff like that. You want to receive messages and stuff and presence, let's say, and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Right. We still would eventually, when they join a conference, then we would still want to use all those other features. But when they first log in, there'd be sort of two modes, like just presence only mode, just lightweight XMPP, and then there'd be
I see.
video conferencing mode.
So our experience with that, so every time till now when that was done, it was totally separate thing, separate from the Jitsi deployments. We have in the past HipChat, Stripe, and now the 8x8 products. So Jitsi is embedded. It's like a different service. All those calling, chat, presences stuff, it goes to separate channel, and the deployments are using the JWT token.
I see. So you basically have two separate XMPP sessions. Is that how that works? Got it.
Yeah. Maybe you can use just plain Straw for it or something like that.
Say again.
Maybe you can use just, let's say, for JavaScript Straw. This is the JavaScript library that we use for XMPP.
No, Straw, yeah.
Or I mean, yeah.
I think we might have a use case for something very similar, though, for the case where we have a limited set of participants in the conference and everyone else is watching the YouTube stream. I don't know how that would be implemented, but that's one way to go. And that's been discussed as a feature that we want. So we may be going there in the future. I don't know.
There shouldn't be anything that technically prevents that approach, right?
No,
it's
suggesting... just the only thing that prevents it right now is that Gkofo initializes a session with anyone that joins the MOOC. If they had a flag saying, don't invite me right now, they would join the MOOC and receive presence from everyone, but not actually get an invite and start a WebRTC call.
I see.
Yeah, also I would say maybe, I mean, even if you implement this flag, I would say maybe that can be a little bit too expensive, let's say, for you, because like creating an iframe that you're not using actually and not needing, and like a whole lot of UI stuff and many more. I wouldn't say it's the most efficient way to handle it, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Although I feel like iframes have become a lot more lightweight these days, since like every ad is embedded in, probably you've got like 30 iframes at any given moment.
Yeah, I don't mean like the iframe as an iframe, but I mean we do many stuff there when you start the iframe basically. So and have many stuff there. I mean, even I don't know, even loading the scripts, I would say would be pretty good optimization for you if you can skip that. because you basically don't need it if you don't have video call, right? So,
Right. Except, they would.
but it's up to you though.
Yeah, essentially they would use it. It's just there would be, I was thinking they would just have two rooms, two MECs, and if somebody wanted to, quote unquote, call you, that would happen. That would be in sort of notifications and like that default XMPP connection, and then that would, from there they would then just. But I guess, to the earlier point, I guess there's nothing really preventing. Maybe there's not enough of an upside. Like maybe in the end, it's just simpler just to have two separate XMPP connections, and there's like the lightweight mode. Because I guess the only thing that the only value, and maybe I'm wrong, of having a shared XMPP session connection with just different rooms is, I guess it would be a little bit more seamless in the scenario where you wanted to call somebody. It would all just kind of be happening in the same session. But in reality, I guess if at the end of the day you wanted to call somebody, you could just, that could happen in this sort of lightweight XMPP session. And then you could just send a URL or something that would then trigger the normal flow of just, okay, well, now open the iframe basically, and it works completely decoupled. Is that kind of the recommendation?
Yeah. At least this is what we have been doing, as the mentioned with the other projects, and I would go. I mean, of course, it depends what kind of functionality you have there, but I would definitely choose this approach. If you just want to show some presence or some messages or something a little bit more lightweight, and when you actually have to join the call, you can use the external API to join.
Got it. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, well, we'll try that. Maybe that does seem simpler, at least for now, and you can always blend them later if there's a reason to do so. Cool. Thanks.
Hi. Thanks. Anybody else? We can close the call. Going once. Twice. All right. Thank you for joining, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.